All right. Hey, Trooper Johnson, head coach of the Paralympic bronze medal team. That was really an awesome performance in Tokyo. Trooper, you were playing with a fairly young squad this time around, and you brought them to success. And I got to know, how did you do it? How did you reel them in and make them perform the way they did?
Well, luckily we had a couple of veterans that came back. Natalie Schneider and Darlene Hunter came back to lead the team and be the captains, and really kind of take on not just the leadership mentality of the team itself, but really changing kind of the culture of our program moving forward, and really working to get the younger athletes just kind of on board with understanding and trusting the process and moving along the way.
Trooper, along the path, you've had a whole lot of success. You were on two Paralympic teams, the '96 team to Atlanta, and once again the 2000 team to Sydney, of which both times you scored a bronze medal there too. Bronze must seem to be your color right now.
It seems like it, yeah. So I was
But go ahead.
We got medals in two of them, but we're going to kick the bucket and get one of these silvers or gold eventually. Holy cow.
Yeah, you've been just so instrumental, not only from the standpoint of being a coach now, but as a player. You've got a Hall of Fame career. You played for the Golden State team. You've been around, and you really understand the nature of this game. So as you look back on wheelchair basketball, I mean, I look at it in so many different eras, and I won't even go back to the point of, the 50s or the 60s, but let's pick it up sort of in the 70s with guys like Dave Kiley, Curtis Bell, Jimbo Miller. Those guys were big-time inside players, and they brought the game at that time was more of an inside-the-key kind of game and a little bit more slow and methodical. Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. And the reality is, I didn't get injured until 1981, and so I didn't really know the game in the 70s, right? So I started really playing the game in the mid 80s and then moving forward from there. But they still had a huge presence at that time, and so you were still looking at Kylie and Jim Miller and and the big players. And it was really a pick and roll, dump the ball into the inside of the key, and to just use the advantage of height as much as you could.
Oh, I know. So many of the games resulted in scores that were probably less than 50 points, and you can see why, because there was so much ball movement.
Yeah, swinging the ball around and trying to get that pick and roll and get the big guy in. And it really was dumping the ball into the big guy. I mean, there was, it really started extending the game out later on. As we started playing, you started noticing outside shooters starting to develop. But it was really still that whole mentality of develop the outside shot so you could get the inside game working. And everything was feeding the inside game. So
all of a sudden, then we come into the 90s and things start to change a little bit. The game starts to get a lot faster, and I think a lot of that speed probably developed some of the inside game and brought it to a whole new level. So we started seeing guys like Stevie Welch with the Mavericks. We started seeing Canadian Pat Anderson and the way they could maneuver their chairs. That changed the complexity of the game altogether.
Yeah, totally. I mean, not just the speed of the game, because you had to match speed, but also their outside shooting. I mean, Patty could hit from anywhere. He got over half court, and he was considered a threat. So you really had to look at Anderson as saying, okay, we have to guard him, which extended your defense really significantly and opened up passing lanes and cutting lanes to the basket. So you really had to focus on, guarding the outside threat and then really, honoring the inside. And it really made it hard for a lot of people, especially when you started looking like the Canadian teams. You had Anderson, Joey Johnson, Adam Lancia. So like some of those guys just would eat you up if you extended too far out.
When you're dealing with the point system, Trooper, you've got to mix and match the right way so that you match up well with another team. So when you were playing ball, we probably had a few more of the big guys, the big numbers, the 3-5s playing out on the court, and a few less of the guys out there who are maybe like the 1s and the 2s that were put more in a spot of setting picks.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, we always had Mike Schlappy. I mean, Mike Schlappy was in the 4 games that I played in. He was in 3 of them. And Schlappy was probably one of the smartest ball players. Him and Kylie could think the game more so than anybody. But Slappy was a class one, like one of the best class ones that I've ever seen play. He could set picks. He could run the court really well. He could hit that open shot from the top of the key. But it really did start developing into kind of looking towards a lot of mid-pointers rather than really floating between your highs and lows.
When you look at the modernization of the game of wheelchair basketball, would you have to kind of point the finger? I mean, it's pretty easy to say the king. You know, Dave Kiley changed the game exponentially. Would you happen to agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's nobody like Kiley. Kiley just, yeah, he changed the game and he continues to change the game. You know, he not only did he change the game on the court, but then all of a sudden he helped with modifications in chair designs. And then now he's opening up the 3-on-3 tournaments that he runs and really trying to engage as many people as possible to play in the sport. There's probably never going to be anybody that had an impact like Kiley did.
So talking about the chairs, when you look at the chairs now, Trooper, you must drool a little bit. It's sort of like me with racing, looking at what they've got going now and looking at what we were dealing with and how poorly they turned. How much have the chairs changed, and how much have the chairs started to alter the game too?
Oh my gosh, the equipment is so different than what it used to be. I mean, because now you have the 5th and 6th wheels, so it just changes the turning dynamics of the chair. The straps that allow a player to really strap in and be part of the chair, part of the equipment. So any movement you make within your body changes, causes the chair to turn or react. And so those are two different things that really made a huge difference. You know, when I first started playing, there were no really straps on the chairs. There wasn't a 5th wheel. If you wanted to stop, you did a wheelie. I mean, like it was just the dynamics of everything changed. And then you look at I think there's been a lot more focus on the chair fit, more so than anything, and making sure that the chairs are perfectly fit to that individual. And I think the reality is, you look at, if you were to take an elite cyclist, right, you wouldn't go in there and say, hey, you're going to get a bike off the rack and ride this bike. They'd measure the bike perfectly. They'd set, everything up for that individual person riding that bike. And I think that, the people that are making the chairs have gotten a little bit more specific on how they customize these chairs for each individual, and it helps them perform a lot better.
Oh, no, you can absolutely see, as with the tennis players too, just that ratcheting device so you can get those legs nice and tight so they're not sloppy and moving around in the chair. But, you were talking about the 5th and 6th wheel, and I would have to think that I noticed during the Paralympics, that rear wheel that they have, that little rollerblade wheel, that has to give the player so much confidence when it comes to even something like the long range shot, the 3-point shot, so they know they're not going over backwards. They can get a good lean into the shot.
Yeah, it allows you to do that, but also in your turning, when you lean back and lean on that wheel and adjust your weight into that, it allows a chair to turn and respond a lot faster. It gives you a lot more stability, both in your shot and just in the dynamics of the stability of the chair. So there's so many little complexities involved in just what that wheel does, but it did change the game.
Man, you've been instrumental in so many ways, and I know that you're a part of the Bay Area Outreach and Recreation Program. You do a lot for youth and helping them to get maybe on the straight and narrow and keeping themselves moving forward, so that, and knowing that sports is a real avenue to going into more positive venues in life.
Yeah, I'm real fortunate. I mean, I've been the youth sports program coordinator for the Bay Area Outreach and Recreation Program, also known as BORP, up here in Berkeley, California. I think the reality is looking at sports as an opportunity, as a tool to help kids, integrate in society. Yeah, we help them be a little bit more academically accountable. We help them with their independence, but it's all using sports as that opportunity to do so. Because if kids want to play in tournaments, and you can teach them about being independent, about travel, about being able to manage personal care issues on their own, and using that in the concept of, hey, we're using, if you want to be able to play sports, you have to be able to do these things. If you want to go on a basketball tournament, you have to be able to manage these things on your own. And allowing kids that opportunity to learn how to manage those things on their own, that's going to carry them a lot further than anything else.
Oh, undoubtedly. Those are the intangibles that carry you forward, give you that confidence in life. Trooper, you had one heck of a time in Tokyo. We dealt with COVID, a year off. I know you went there with a young squad, but you reeled them in. How tough was it when you saw that you drew Netherlands right out of the box?
Well, we knew we were going to have to play them eventually. I mean, it was one of those things. I think the reality is it allowed us to really focus on them. right? But we knew that was going to be a tough game. I mean, their performance at the World Championships was ridiculous. They were so dominant in the World Championships in 2018. They pretty much had the same team. They came through. They had all this time to prepare for the games. At some point, we were kind of going, we are going to have to play them for that gold medal. Let's just start it off now and help us prepare the best we can. And for 35 minutes, our team played amazing basketball. Unfortunately, it's a 40-minute game. And so in the last 5 minutes, we kind of fell apart a little bit. But that goes to the fact that we had such a young team. And now, moving forward, hopefully they'll take that information that they gained from that game and that experience and move on.
As a coach and a motivator, what do you say to your team? First round, first draw, Netherlands, they lose, but you got to keep your players up and ready to go. What do you say?
Well, I think the biggest thing is to learn from everything, right? So we did some things extremely well during that game. We moved the ball really well. We put pressure on them defensively. We were able to control the pace for most of the game. And then what we have to do is just go ahead and make sure that we're cleaning up these certain elements down the stretch. But I think that overall, get them to understand that for 35 minutes, they played an incredible game, right? And then if we just make a couple tweaks and a couple corrections here and there, we're going to be fine.
Hey, man, the NWBA has been getting healthy again. I mean, I don't mean like that they weren't there, but they seem to be making pretty massive strides in terms of trying to get the word out about the game. How do you see it changing as an organization?
Oh, I think it's been great. Will Waller came in at kind of a strange time when, the league was a little bit struggling. And then all of a sudden the league gets hit with COVID, or not just the league, but the world gets hit with COVID. But I mean, I think the league had to deal with that and teams not being able to compete. And now that the things are starting to open up again, I mean, teams are just coming out, they're starting to register, and hopefully this season will be another, a great season for everybody. I think that they've done a great job expanding out into the veterans component, expanding the game for women, and just really trying to get as many people engaged as possible.
Trooper, you've done so much for our sporting world in general. You've been a mentor. You've been a high-level player. You're the coach of a bronze medal team, and I know you have aspirations to more. And thanks a lot for everything you've done for our world in general.
Well, thanks a lot, Bob. I appreciate it.